in the squadron. They called him Bullets, but we call him Greg Kelly. Greg Kelly is on the air
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
One of the reasons why I want there to be peace is I can't stand talking about Iran so much. Iran, there are other things to talk about. There are other things going on. There are other things that interest me. I've never been to Iran. I've been to Iraq. I've been to UAE. I've been to Bahrain. I've been to the surrounding countries, Kuwait. I have flown over Iran. I was surprised at how many lights were on. I could see Tehran off in the distance. I'm like, okay, that city is functioning. Evil empire that it is. There are other things. And also some of this, for me, forgive me, does seem a little notional. I don't have a direct feel for the leaders, for the Ayatollah Khomeini, and the rest of them. I saw these guys on television. I saw, my formative years. It was fascinating, right? The Iranian hostage crisis. I talked to an Iranian hostage the other day. It's fascinating. When I see one of those guys, I've only met two. One last night and one a couple of weeks ago. And we used to think about them all the time. All those guys. 444 days. No wonder why Iran, kind of like almost in its DNA with this crazy regime that's been in power for most of the past 47 years, they think they can walk all over us because Jimmy Carter let them walk all over us. To a lesser extent, Ronald Reagan, loved the guy. I mean, he started to kind of correct it, but they did release the hostages rather than deal with Ronald Reagan. Some people think that there was a deal made on the side. Maybe there was, maybe there wasn't. Maybe it was legal, maybe it wasn't. But they were released the moment President Reagan became president. How about that one? George H.W. Bush, Iraq, Kuwait, Iran on the sidelines. And then we've been grappling with this nuclear stuff. President Trump did it. And it's been on his mind for a long time. I'd like to go to Iran someday, to be honest. I feel like I've been cooped up in this one country for a little bit too long. I don't really want to go because I see these videos about how dangerous everywhere is. Speaking of which, south of the border, you got to be crazy to go to Mexico anymore. You got to be crazy to go on a cruise. I'm not doing it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to get sick. I don't want to have some sort of crazy incident. I really don't want to be around crowds of people anymore, to be honest. Now, possibly I'm getting just freaked out by all these social media stuff. I just saw a United States Marine get stabbed in the neck on the streets of Wilmington, North Carolina. That is a place I've been. It's nice. It's peaceful. I guess he was out in the, bar district at night. He gets stabbed in the throat, and he just died. He got stabbed in the throat the other night, and he just died. If you do watch some of these videos, and I have to take a gigantic leap back from social media, it will take over your life and your soul if you're not careful. I think I just told you guys about James Flippin and that situation I had. I usually keep my phone in the other room, and I wake up and my phone is right there on the night table because I had to send an email before I went to bed, and it's right there. I was up late last night because of the Iran peace deal, and we were pumping out videos left and right. And I thought that was, and I was also very excited. I had a little shock. I woke up at 9:15 this morning. It's a little bit late for a weekday, I know, but I had to be at work at 11, and I'm not going to get home until after midnight. So it's not like I'm on vacation. Then again, I get up at 9:15. I've got 1 hour and 45 minutes of me time. That's it. And what did I do? For 1 hour, I scrolled Instagram, looking at a summary of the Shawshank Redemption, looking at two people fighting on the streets in Wilmington, North Carolina, a domestic incident in, where the hell was that? Australia somewhere. Some guy putting cats on a canoe and the birds licked the cats and their friends. I mean, just on and on and on. I could not. And I was conscious of this. I need to put this down, but I wouldn't and I couldn't for an hour. How do I get that hour back? Well, I think I take Instagram and all these other crazy, stupid apps that are going to kill us all if we're not careful. Thank God that woman won that lawsuit. I just love it. Now, should we talk about the big piece that they're talking about in the White House? I know this for a fact. People are looking at each other in the White House, and they're saying to each other, are you okay with this piece? Do you think we made a mistake? Who talked? Who didn't? Well, the answer is the president talked. The president himself talked to the New York Times, talked to Maggie Haberman. The New York Times, fake news, they've done a lot of harm. But for President Trump, and weirdly for me, it's the hometown paper. And when I was growing up, it was actually a respectable newspaper. I remember on the Long Island Railroad going into the city with my dad, and my dad's reading the New York Times. He says, wow, what a great paper this is. This is like in 1976 or something like that. 50 years ago. It was a great paper. What it's become now, what has it become now? First of all, they haven't written one article. I think 3 articles a day are not talking about trans issues and trans kids. The rest of the articles have some sort of everything's trans. Even the cooking section is about trans cooks. Everything. I mean, they got some sort of perversion fetish over there. It's the strangest thing. However, there are 3 articles that are somewhat important and often fake news, but President Trump talks to Maggie Haberman. I know this. So listen to this, all right? And the angle they're pursuing, I think they're drawing the wrong conclusion. The reporting may be accurate, though. You ready? You ready? They're all talking about it. The black SUV carrying Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arrived at the White House before 11 a.m. on February 11th. The Israeli leader, who had been pressing for months for the United States to agree to a major assault on Iran, was whisked inside with little ceremony, out of view of reporters, primed for one of the most high-stake moments in his long career. U.S. and Israeli officials gathered in the cabinet room adjacent to the Oval Office. Then Mr. Netanyahu headed downstairs for the main event, a highly classified presentation on Iran for President Trump and his team in the White House Situation Room, which was rarely used in person for meetings with foreign leaders. Mr. Trump sat down, but not in his usual position at the head of the room's mahogany conference table. Instead, the president took a seat on one side, facing the large screens mounted along the wall. Mr. Netanyahu on the other side, directly opposite. Appearing on the screen behind the prime minister was David Barnea, the director of the Mossad, Israel's foreign intelligence agency, as well as military officials. Arrayed visually behind Mr. Netanyahu, they created the image of a wartime leader surrounding by his team. Now, they're trying to, what they're doing with this stuff is to feed red meat to the podcast bros. This is Israel. Israel talked us into this war. That's where that's where they're going. All right, that's what they're going. Now, it's not true, and I know it's not true. And I'll show you later how it's not true. Susie Wiles, the White House chief of staff, sat at the far end of the table. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who doubled as the national security advisor, had taken his regular seat. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and General Dan Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, they generally sat together in such settings, were on one side. Joining them was John Ratcliffe, the CIA director, and the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, Trump's special envoy. The gathering had been kept deliberately quiet to guard against leaks. Other top cabinet secretaries had no idea what was happening. J.D. Vance was out of the country. The presentation that Mr. Netanyahu would make over the next hour would be pivotal in setting the United States and Israel on the path toward a major conflict in the Middle East, one of the world's most volatile regions, and it would lead to a series of discussions inside the White House over the following days and weeks, the details of which have not been previously reported, in which Mr. Trump weighed his options and the risks before giving the go-ahead to join Israel in attacking Iran. The account of how Mr. Trump took the United States into war is drawn from reporting for a forthcoming book, Regime Change, Inside the Imperial Presidency of Donald Trump. It reveals how the deliberations inside the administration highlighted the president's instincts, his inner circle's fractures, and the way he runs the White House. It draws on extensive interviews conducted on the condition of anonymity to recount internal discussions and sensitive issues. Now, you could stop reading there. You could say, well, that's just fake news. And the New York Times does write a hell of a lot of fake news. But I have a little piece of information for you. The President of the United States talks to these people. The President of the United States talked to Bob Woodward. Bob Woodward wrote one horrible book about President Trump. Then he wrote another one. He still talks to him. And you know what? That's okay. If these books come out negative, you know what it takes to blow a book out of the water these days? A tweet. No one but nobody reads these books. It is fascinating. Even the book reviewers don't read the books. To read a book right now is one of the most unnatural things you can do on earth. Think about all of the distractions, how our minds work these days. To turn that all off and bury yourself into a book, good luck. I've tried it myself. It's harder than ever before, but I do it. Oh, and that's how I know Gavin Newsom will never be president. More on that in a second. In the Situation Room, Mr. Netanyahu made a hard sell, suggesting that Iran was ripe for regime change and expressing the belief that a joint U.S.-Israeli mission could finally bring an end to the Islamic Republic. At one point, the Israelis played for Mr. Trump a brief video that included a montage of potential new leaders who could take over the country if the hardline government fell. Among those featured was Reza Pahlavi, the exiled son of Iran's last Shah, now a Washington-based dissident who had tried to position himself as a secular leader. We all know that guy. I don't think he has a chance. Mr. Netanyahu and his team outlined conditions they portrayed as pointing to near certain victory. Iran's ballistic missile program could be destroyed in a few weeks. The regime would be so weakened that it could not choke off the Strait of Hormuz. And the likelihood that Iran would land blows against U.S. interests in neighboring countries was assessed as minimal. Now, again, what they're trying to push here is not the details of the meeting and who was right and who was wrong. It's that the meeting is even taking place and that Netanyahu is in the room. Now, I'm going to do it again. Everybody in that room has known each other for basically, a couple of years. That's it, right? They're acquaintances. They're work acquaintances. If you go back 20 years, what was Susie Wiles doing? Nothing against her, but she was the chief of staff for the mayor of Jacksonville, Florida. You go back 20 years, John Ratcliffe, who is now the director of the Central Intelligence Agency, was no kidding the mayor of Heath, Texas, Heath. Ever hear of that place? I know, neither have I. What else? Just they weren't in the game. Benjamin Netanyahu was household name famous 20 years ago. So was Donald Trump, and they knew each other. Benjamin Netanyahu stayed at Jared Kushner's house. They had dinner together. They know each other. This is not his first rodeo. President Trump wasn't sold, and that's what they're trying to portray. Sold on this video presentation. You ever watch President Trump? Does he look like a guy who doesn't have a lot on his mind? No, of course, he has a lot on his mind. You can tell he's always thinking. He's taking in information. This thing, staying up all night, he doesn't need sleep like most people. That's true. So it's just fascinating. And yes, it's a little bit anti-Semitic for these people to be pushing that this is Israel. Israel is in control. Israel pitched this. Israel's pulling the strings and all of that nonsense. As if President Trump would delegate all of that stuff, the decision-making, to anybody, let alone the leader of a foreign country. Israel is a friend. It's an important friend. They have a voice, but it's not the decisive voice. All right? Fair? Totally. All right, so once we get through all of that, it's an interesting read. That's all I'll say. It's an interesting read. But it doesn't mean what the conclusion, I believe, is off, or their preferred takeaway for you, the reader. This is to throw another monkey wrench. All these books come out. They're time to screw up politics. This is going to come out in June, right? It's going to try to shape the battlefield for the midterms. Speaking of which, I'm not worried about the midterms anymore. I know I have to be, and there will be a time, right? Right now, you just do the best job you possibly can. You worry about politics by doing a great job. September, that's when people will start tuning in. I am worried deep down, but I can't think about it day in and day out. Although I can have members of Congress on this show anytime they want who are running, actually, or candidates for Congress who are running for those swing districts. Look, anybody's invited, but the ones I really, really, really am interested in are the conservative candidates who have a shot at competitive open seats. My friend John Von Swall in North Carolina suggested that. Give them a boost, give them a voice, and let's get active. Social media, give money. Give money to your preferred candidates. Small donors rule. You don't have to be an oligarch. $5. $5 would be great. 1,000 people giving $5 is $5,000. That's 5,000 times better than one guy writing a check for a $5,000. You know what I mean? That's what they prefer. It's the small donors. This is still a democracy. Be right back.
Greg Kelly
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You know, it's kind of like stocks a little bit. You know, I learned this from Warren Buffett, of all people. You know, you really, you don't have to, if you're not in the business, you don't have to check it every single day. I don't have to check oil prices every single day, but they're down and they're getting lower. Lowest point than at any point in the past couple of weeks. And I'm looking at that trusty map of the Strait of Hormuz, and well, it's not a live picture, but pretty soon ships are going to be flowing through. We're still kind of waiting for the dust to settle, right, and how this is all going to shape up. But we're in a very good place. Hey, Rex Heuermann has pleaded guilty to 8 murders. My God, that guy, the architect who was taking the Long Island Railroad to his office in Midtown Manhattan every single day. This guy was begging to be caught, for crying out loud. Excuse me. His DNA was all over the place. He left his initials at one of the crime scenes. How could they not have found him then? And get this, they knew this all the way back in 2011, that the suspect, the guy they were looking for, was very, very big, a large man. This guy's 6'6" and 300 pounds. They knew that he lived in the South Shore of Long Island, possibly Massapequa or Massapequa Park. Those were some of the communities based on cell phone records and the burner phones and how it all worked. They triangulated. They also knew that the man drove a car with an unusual window. Or they didn't know, but there was evidence to suggest that he drove a car with a kind of slanty triangle. Kind of like, what do we call those things in math? Isosceles triangle, parallelogram, one of those things. You ever see a Chevy Avalanche? Picture a triangle. Now take the top of the triangle and drag it over. It's like a triangle that's leaning in a direction. It's a very unique window. Well, guess what? A pimp in 2011 described that vehicle to the cops. They wrote it down. They put it in the system. They knew it had a slanty window. They knew, and from that, how many cars have slanty windows like that? Chevy Avalanches have that slanty window. And they knew he was in Massapequa Park. They knew he was a very big guy. But the computer would not spit out the answer, right? You put all this data into a computer, and it kept on coming up 0, 0, 0. They wouldn't get on their feet and walk the neighborhood. How many houses are there in Massapequa Park, crying out loud? 1,000, 1,200, 800? And the computer would not tell them what their feet did.
Greg Kelly, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Oh, we are back, and I am so grateful. A couple of quick things, though, to tie up. Rex Heuermann, they kept on putting the description in the computer. The computer did not know how to characterize a Chevy Avalanche. What is a Chevy Avalanche? Is it a truck or is it a car? Well, the computer thought it was a truck, and they thought it was a car, or thought it was a car, kept on getting it backwards, and the computer never gave them the answer. The computer, because they were not putting in the right parameters. Again, the computer didn't tell them, but if they got out on their feet and looked with their own eyes, walked the neighborhood, because Heuermann had a Chevy Avalanche in his driveway in Massapequa Park, which is where those phone calls were coming from to some of the families of the prostitutes. It's absolutely wild, and it is a crime that we did not solve this thing much earlier, Suffolk County. Thank God for Ray Tierney and also for Rodney Harrison, the police commissioner at the time, who they said they'd put fresh eyes on it, and they solved it in about 6 weeks. Fantastic. All right, the Iran stuff. Let's bring in world-class expert Gordon G. Chang. President Trump is a huge fan of Gordon. He listens to him. Gordon, of course, author of Plan Red, China's project to destroy America, the coming collapse of China, and China is going to war. Once we take care of Iran, are we going to have to worry about China? Oh, boy. Gordon G. Chang, welcome back, sir. What do you think of the deal so far?
I think it was important for President Trump to negotiate and obtain the ceasefire. One of the things it's doing is it's showing the party at fault, because Iran right now has announced that it is reneging the deal by not allowing ships through the Strait of Hormuz, which of course was a critical component of the ceasefire. So this has put the United States in a much better position from a propaganda point of view. And that's important because Iran and China have been waging a malicious information war against the United States in connection with what's going on in Iran.
You think that's going to hold? I mean, I was actually just listening, Caroline Levitt, a couple of the reporters last night. You declare a ceasefire, and it takes about a day or so for everybody, quite frankly, to get the word and put down their weapons and, you know, for things to start taking shape, for the ceasefire to actually take hold. Is that what we're seeing right now? Just the fog of fog of war a little bit?
Well, in the first hours after the ceasefire, Iran did fire projectiles into neighboring states. And I think that was one of those things where outlying units didn't get the word. But what we're now watching is the situation in Lebanon, where President Trump said the ceasefire does not include Lebanon, and Iran believes that it does. Now, I believe President Trump, and that means the ceasefire is fragile at this moment. We'll see if the president can put it back together, but clearly the world is seeing that it is Iran that is the guilty party.
Okay, and even if it is fragile, I mean, there is this understanding. Like, look, just about 3 days ago, they were saying, oh, President Trump isn't even talking to anybody. They had doubts about that. No, we've been talking to people. There are moderates over there. We've been talking to sane people. There are this Aragashi guy, I think his name is, the foreign minister. You know, these things are tough, and there will be fits and starts probably. But overall, I'm just optimistic, and maybe I should tone down my optimism a little bit.
Well, no, I think that this is going to put the United States in a much better position. Now, we don't know what's going to happen on the negotiation of these peace plans that have been going back and forth, but it shows that when the United States is determined, it gets something. You know, President Trump, he does what he says he will do. And the important message here is that the Chinese and Russians are starting to understand that, because we are seeing Trump accomplish things that nobody thought could occur. So this is really good story for our country, Greg.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Now, do me a favor, this information war that China and Iran have been engaged in, what does that look like? Where have I seen it? I mean, I guess I know where I see it a little bit in the mainstream media. We wipe out their leadership. We wipe out their missiles. We wipe out their nuclear. We have total dominance. And some people are trying to portray that we were somehow losing. I mean, can you imagine if that happened to America, if they took out the entire cabinet, our entire Navy? Would we be winning? No. So what was China doing? What was the net effect? What were they specifically doing with Iran in terms of propaganda?
Well, for instance, on the 3rd, when we recovered our pilot, we saw Chinese propaganda say that the United States intentionally tried to kill that lost weapons officer who was in the ridges in Iran. This is malicious. This is clearly not a mistake on the part of Beijing's propaganda masters. They were out to deliberately lie, and they sometimes are successful at this. Now, of course, it was a 100% fabrication. We were trying to save that weapons officer. We actually did it, but the Chinese were saying we were trying to kill him. The other issue you point out, and is probably just as important, is that we have a lot of elites, especially in New York and Washington, who are trying to run down the United States, who will go to any lengths to criticize our country and President Trump. And we saw this with charges of war crimes, which we're not committing war crimes, charges of committing genocide. And yet you have prominent voices in the Democratic Party and also in the Republican Party who just hate our president and will say anything, no matter how grossly irresponsible.
Yeah, no, it's really something else. And I wonder about these, the podcast bros. You know, I mean, we used to, there's something up. You know, I just found out that the Central Intelligence Agency is sponsoring Sean Ryan's podcast, right? Who's turned against Trump. turned against everything. And I don't know. I wouldn't put it past our government to be buying these guys off or setting them up to begin with. They've done that before, Gordon. Certainly they have. So, all right. Going forward, yeah, you care to make any predictions?
I predict the United States is going to prevail. I predict that over some period of time, and I don't know what it will be, the Iranian regime will not survive. And I think that when the regime does fall, there will be an era of peace in the Middle East. That after decades and decades and decades, we will see the Middle East flower. And that's because President Trump has established relations with Saudi Arabia, which were really weakened during the Biden administration. And we will see the Gulf states aligned behind America. So you can take that to the bank.
I love it. I have one more question. This big New York Times story, and we can dismiss the New York Times as fake news, but the fact is President Trump does talk to Maggie Haberman, and I think he gave the green light to some of his staff to, help her with this book. But one thing I think is erroneous. They portray the war as being sold to President Trump by Bibi Netanyahu. Now, I know that is not the case. Now, they set it up as though it is the case, right? The meeting and the situation room and the sales pitch. I would like your thoughts on that. I'm going to run by a theory I have for you. Fine, maybe he made an effective sales pitch. Maybe he didn't. It doesn't really matter. President Trump has been thinking about these issues for decades. And Bibi Netanyahu, and across from him making a pitch, he's known Bibi Netanyahu, since the 1980s. Quite frankly, everybody has. He's been in and out of power. The guys in the room, and no disrespect to them, but guys like CIA Director Radcliffe, 10 years ago, he was the mayor of a small town in Texas. Same goes for General Kane. He was a captain, for crying out loud. Good guys. They just don't have it's wild. The advisors around President Trump do not have the depth and breadth of, quite frankly, wisdom and experience that President Trump has. I know you may find that a bit of a stretch, but I'm just saying sitting across from Benjamin Netanyahu is not the biggest deal in the world for somebody like Trump. And he does and will and has made up his own mind. That's my thesis, sir. And I would love an expert like you to weigh in.
Yeah, I read that New York Times piece, and I thought that it was wrong in a sense that it tried to say Netanyahu got Trump to start the war, because that piece itself says that a number of people in the room were skeptical of Netanyahu. And that piece also mentioned that Trump had formed views on Iran a long time ago. It was clear that President Trump knew that Iran presented a clear and present danger to the United States. One which I think the president could have made a stronger case when he talked to the American public last week. But clearly, President Trump, I believe, deserves to be in Profiles of Courage, John F. Kennedy's book, because he took steps that no other president would take, and that is to protect the American people from an Iranian regime that had ballistic missiles, perhaps that could reach the U.S., and also very close to having at least 11 atomic devices. So, yes, President Trump did the right thing, Netanyahu or no Netanyahu.
All right. You're amazing. Gordon G. Chang. Nothing like this guy. At Gordon G. Chang on social media. Your tweets are really something, man. Your tweets are amazing. And so are you. Give our best to Lydia, okay?
I will do that, Greg, and thank you so much.
You bet. To be continued, sir. See you later. I just love this. It's just he is so smart. And President Trump is always talking to him. And I'm glad multiple sources. Did you hear about this crazy guy who killed the 7-year-old girl in Texas? Oh, gosh, the FedEx driver. It's best not to think about it. I'm going to go to the Hoyerman thing one more time. Totally deranged, totally weird. All that evil, those poor women in the basement of that crummy house. What the hell is going on with that one? Hello, Ernesto. How are you?
Doing great. Okay, I got an idea for Trump. He shouldn't do any books. He should use the power of AI to make historical and propaganda movies about his presidency and Operation Epic Fury.
All right, no more books. What do you mean by no more books? He shouldn't write any more books? He shouldn't what?
book, but to become effective to the American public, movies people want to see, visually. And I seen Trump as a Roman general on Instagram, and he looks great. He can do that.
I mean, look, those videos are all over the place, as you know. You just saw one. I mean, I don't know if do we need more videos? Do we need more videos of President Trump? Hey, let me tell you something. AI is not the digital savior they say it is. A lot of problems with AI. A lot of problems. I'm not saying you shouldn't use it, but it's not like press the button and it does all the work. You got to watch that thing like a hawk. And if anything, it makes skilled people more skilled. It doesn't take away skill. It's very interesting. But anyway, all right. President Trump should be on AI. Is that it?
Yeah, well, he should make movies because Hollywood is not going to make movies making him look good. You know what I mean? So he should take his production company and make movies after his presidency to make him look great and, the whole politics, to perpetuate the MAGA movement.
All right.
What do you think?
Thank you. Look, I think those videos, if you're on social media, and I don't recommend it, by the way, they're everywhere. You see them all the time. Hey, when's the last time you actually saw a movie? You actually sat through a movie. Nobody watches movies anymore, right? I mean, have you? Nobody. No. Yeah. What movie did you see? What?
One battle after another.
You watched that? One. Who? What?
The Leonardo DiCaprio movie.
All right. Well, you were alone in the movie theater, weren't you?
Oh, you mean theater?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I told you didn't go to the movie, right? You saw it on TV. That's got to be a very weird situation. Like next episode. One more thing here. Sal, hello.
Oh, hi, Mr. Kelly. First-time caller. I wanted to chat with you with regards to the Strait of Hormuz and the tariffs. I'm for it, but with conditions. And, think about how much, Iran has cost us for the last 47 plus years. How much have they cost other countries as well? What if we were to tariff, we'll say, okay, Iran, and they have to redevelop their own country from this war. So what if that tariff would say, okay, 50 cents to the dollar, and there has to be an accounting for it, and the remainder goes to the United States and all of the other countries, and maybe even as a penalty for those countries who did not assist. What do you think about that?
Sure. Why not? I think. I mean, can you boil that down one more time for me? One more time in one sentence. What is the idea?
Idea is 50 cents on the dollar on the tariff. They have to redevelop their own country, right? Because obviously there's a purpose for it. I'm not talking militarily.
No, I hear you. I don't think you're talking tariff. You mean toll, right? Toll. Charge them a toll. Hey, man, I just want the bombs to stop. And that's a very intriguing idea. That's a very, very intriguing idea. I appreciate that very much. Let me cogitate the possibilities. Harry is standing by. Hello, Harry.
Good afternoon, Greg. How are you?
Good.
I have a biblical question.
Uh-oh. Oh gosh, I got to put my, you're not testing me, are you? Because, all right, but go ahead. What is it?
In Genesis, there was separation between the devil and God. We understand that. And the days of Noah, there was the 200 watchers. The angels were called the 200 watchers, led by an angel called Samwazaya. I may have his name wrong. And they were also, they done wrong. They had
the angels.
relationships
Wait,
with.
The angels were no good.
Yeah, the angels decided to have sex with the women, with the human women. They bore children called the Nephilim.
Oh, man. You know what? I must say, I'm not familiar with this part of the Bible. I knew I was going to be stumped by you, but keep going.
I was just curious. Now, the 200 angels were banished. They were supposed to be, they're serving time or something. I was just curious, is there a relationship between the devil and the 200 angels?
Is there a relationship between the devil and those 200 angels? Well,
Samyaza.
Yeah. Let me see here. I don't know if we know that from the Bible. I don't know if we know that. Let me look at my Bible here. Are you talking is this in, hold on a second. All right. In the book of Enoch, we have about 200 angels. They're called the Watchers. And yes, they do descend to earth. They are led by figures like Semjaza, as you said. I'm looking this up, by the way. They take human wives. They teach forbidden knowledge. Their actions lead to corruption and chaos. They are ultimately judged and punished by God. Now, Genesis says this. It's very short. In Genesis 6:1-4, sons of God take daughters of men, and the Nephilim are mentioned. Now, it does not say anything about the 200 angels. It doesn't say their names, doesn't give the details. All right? But is there a separation between God and the devil in Genesis? Man, this is a biblical question. I'm not a biblical scholar. I love God and Jesus. Harry, that's quite the question. Are you a theologian student?
Well, not exactly. I just studied a lot of the Bible.
You get hung up on things like that?
Well, it's a question.
I don't have the answer. But look, I'm still learning. I am on my journey. And where are you in your journey?
A lot of reading, observing and realizations of the word and how it is affected in today's society.
All right. I love it, and I'm impressed. You probably have forgotten more than I know about the Bible, but it is a wonderful, wonderful journey. And I don't know the answer to your question, all right? To be continued, though. And keep an eye on me, because I'm learning every day, and I'll be right back.
Greg Kelly, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
It's a very smart thing that President Trump has started to do. You know what he does? He calls reporters, and reporters can call him. Regular reporters, you can call him on the phone, and he will answer. Now, why is that smart? All right, these are reporters who are not like necessarily MAGA people, right? These are people from the fake news. He has, in his own way, started to win some of them over, right? They realize that they will never, ever, ever have access like this again. And it's a fact of life that when you get access, when you're granted access, that person who is granted the access on some level feels like they owe you. And when they do their stories, they should take care of you or at least give you the benefit of the doubt. Now, and that's natural and that's fine. You know, there are a lot of reporters out there who are like socially totally clueless, and they're just like, they got a syndrome. There's something a little bit off with them. And part of them thinks like they're running the world. If I write my story, it's going to have an impact on the world. Watch this. And all they do is really annoy people. My experience is nobody remembers a piece of journalism other than the journalist and the person who is written about. The reader, the audience, it all melts away. So they just got the woman who sold ketamine to Matthew Perry. Remember him from Friends? He died of a drug overdose. That was somebody else's fault? I mean, that guy had a problem for decades, many, many decades. So Rex Heuermann is guilty. The sentencing phase, we're going to have a sentencing phase for this guy. It took 2 years. One thing I'm going to point out, anytime I think of Rex Heuermann, I think the investigation, people, possibly that crazy chief they had out there. Who was that crazy police commissioner they had in Suffolk County for a long time? He was a maniac. He was always beating people up and getting in trouble. I forgot his name. But I think he was part of the problem. And the other thing I think of, the day they arrested Rex Heuermann. Do you remember how they did it? It's on security camera on Fifth Avenue. He did a full day of work. And then he comes out of his office at about 5 o'clock, maybe 7 o'clock at night. And he's walking down the sidewalk. And a bunch of guys in suits, not like all at once, but one after the other, they just start to walk very closely next to him, right? About 10 of them, 10 or 11 of them, because he's a huge guy. And they just kind of surround him. And if you were walking by, you might not even notice it. These guys were all in plain clothes. They were arresting a serial killer. And then I think back to when some of the January 6 people were arrested. My friend Christopher Cuny. They sent the SWAT team into his home. The FBI SWAT team. They came storming in there, bulletproof vests, goggles, night vision goggles. They had a tank in the front, a tank in the back. Look at what they did to Roger Stone, for crying out loud. And Rex Hoyerman, they treated like a gentleman. I had no problem with the way the cops arrested Rex Hoyerman. It looked like they did it professionally and cleanly. And that's what it should be, professional and clean. But they were trying to make a political point. They were trying to cancel MAGA. They were trying to cancel Trump. How did that work out for them, huh?
Thanks for listening to The Greg Kelly Show. You can hear The Greg Kelly Show weekdays at 12:15 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?